Hey guys, wanted to go ahead and do a review of the Audio-Technica M50X. So I've had this headphone for years and I never actually did an official review on it, but I got a request from somebody saying, hey, can you review the M50X? So yeah, let's go and do that. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some notes on the screen. Please note that whatever is in the notes is usually not discussed in the video. They're just two separate things altogether, but I strongly recommend checking out the notes because it'll give you a lot more information. Okay. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is mainly signature and then what it sounds like, and then we'll do some model comparisons. Okay. So let's go ahead and break it down, right? So the bass on this is actually, it's accurate, but a little fun in a good way. But it's actually, so it's in this fine line where it's fun, but at the same time accurate. So it kind of pleases both crowds in a way for the bass. For sub bass, it's actually pretty accurate. Like I thought it was like pretty accurate. For female vocals, it sounded actually, it's full, it's not synthetic, it's not thin, it's really well done, it's accurate and neutral, but at the same time, it's like it's full, but it's not lush, and it's not musical, it's just like accurate and full in a good way. For male vocals, the same thing. It is basically full, it is accurate, it is neutral. Now, that makes you think everything about this headphone is perfect, but no, there are some significant flaws. There's three main flaws with this headphone, and I'll talk about it right now. Okay, so the first thing is, now it's a minor issue because obviously I kept the headphone, but clamping force. While I was even taking notes, I found that it was just a little bit definitely clamping down on my ear. So I definitely have headphones that are much more comfortable. The second thing I want to say is the soundstage on this is it's pathetic. Oh my God. It feels like I'm not the best at determining soundstage per se, but I would notice that it just feels like a 2D flat, plain platform. It doesn't feel like a room. You know what I mean? It's really bad with soundstage. And then third of all, while it does sound pretty good and pretty accurate in terms of music, the moment you crank it up, sibilant parts get really spicy and extremely harsh, specifically female vocals.
Okay, I gotta go somewhere, so can we make this quick?
$100,
the C214 is...
So I would notice that the Mariah Carey test track was extremely harsh and sibilant when I cranked the volume up a little bit. I noticed the Lana Del Rey track was extremely sibilant, but it didn't really have that effect on male vocals, but it was more so with female vocals. So that leads me to believe, but it's not a surprise. I mean, we know this already. This is a V-shaped IEM. It's V-shaped in the sense that so the bass is pretty accurate, but it's a little fun. But there definitely is something in the treble that is spicing up, those vocals for female vocals, which make it sound which is actually good for audio engineering. Like if you're actually fixing your audio, you want that. You want to be able to fix that. And that's what these were made for. So this is in that fine line of it's enjoyable, but also it can be harsh. So yeah, let's go over some headphones here and go from there. Just like model comparisons, I'm going to just do it like my IEM sort of videos where I just go over a bunch of models, which will give you a better picture of what this sounds like. Okay, so let's go over the Shure 840A. So the Shure 840A is much warmer. It is much more forgiving with audio, and this is much more musical. This is kind of more warmish, almost blubbery, but not quiet, but much more warmer in tonality. And this is, I would say, almost useless for critical editing. As in, if you have bad audio, you won't know with these. So these are more for monitoring and for fun. This is more for if you want to be able to fix your audio before it reaches thousands of people. It will let you know if you have really harsh and sibilant audio. And this is why voice actors actually like to use the M50X. So there's the Shure 840A. The next one I want to talk about, this is the AKG K371. So this is actually more Harman. Basically, it was literally designed to sound great on everything. And so it depends on who you talk to, whether you think that's accurate or not. I think actually, in many ways, it's not accurate for me because I want to be able to look at a track that's super sibilant and let it know and tell me it's sibilant, whereas this will actually round it out. So this is much more musical. I would say if you want something that's much more enjoyable, definitely go with this track. If you want something that's much more I would say comfortable, definitely go with this. If you want something that's, this is definitely the no-brainer sort of recommendation I give to folks who aren't really audio engineers but are looking for something that's really enjoyable for a closed back, right? For a closed back headphone, this is usually my strongest recommendation. Now, I do also want to mention, I did have the K360 one, and I returned that. The K360 one is more neutral, but it also sounds grainy and radio-y. And in many ways, I would just say, forget it. I don't care that it's neutral if it sounds like, right? Go for the K371 instead, even though these are a little bit more enjoyable, a little bit more flattering in general, okay? The next headphone, let's go ahead and talk about the HD600s. So the HD600s, it's a open back headphone, so it does have more soundstage, but surprisingly, not that much soundstage. These are actually but it's a lot better than this because this one feels like almost 2D and unrealistic in the way it's done, whereas this is at least this feels like a room, like when you listen to it. Now, this is listed as the epitome of neutrality. So you ask anybody, they're going to be like, this is absolute neutral. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good at everything. What took me years to understand is that these are actually pretty terrible for critical voiceover editing. In other words, if you have really sibilant tracks, you won't know. They'll sound really smooth on here. And that is the same story with, and even worse so, with the Sennheiser HD6XX. Both of these smooth out sibilants so much, and the biggest tell is this. The people who tout this headphone the most on YouTube channels have the worst audio.
Or the Bose 700s,
I'm serious, because all they do is they don't know they sound bad on this. Whereas if you rolled with this, and you were making an audio, you would know you have bad audio, you need to fix something, right? So these are definitely, these are neutral, but they're definitely, I would say, blunted on treble, which is better for enjoyability. These are great for mixing. These are not good for monitoring, obviously, because they're open back and it'll bleed into the microphone. And these aren't good for critical editing, in my opinion. That's why a lot of audio engineers actually, and we'll get to the next one, they rely on the Sony MDR7506. So the Sony MDR7506, in comparison to this tilts brighter. This is a lot sharper when it comes to sibilants. This is extremely harsh. Basically, every single mouth click, every single plosive you have, every single sibilance, if you have bad audio, it will let you know. And a lot of audio engineers use this as a final cross-check. They go back and whatever mix they made, they're like, oh, hold on, one more thing. Let's wear this on. One more, and then they go back and they listen to the whole track. And they're like, oh, that sounds bad. Okay, let's use Soothe 2 and blunt that down. Oh, let's fix that. And after you do that, you've got a perfect mix. This is the final checkup. This is the strict Gordon Ramsay cook saying, that's raw. You know what I mean? Think of this as a tool and not for enjoyment. I would absolutely not recommend this for people who are not an audio engineer, someone who is just looking to enjoy music. Do not get this. But if you're looking for something to critically check your audio so that, if you have really bad audio and it's reaching out to thousands of people, this will definitely, the joke that audio engineers say is if you manage to make this sound good on a 7506, it's going to sound good on everything, okay? Next one we'll talk about here. These are the Sindaras. So by comparison, the Sindaras have way more soundstage. It's way more soundstage. Now, I actually evaluated this yesterday, piece by piece, so I can give you a quick overview of what this sounds like. So, vocals and voices actually sound neutral and accurate and full on these. However, they don't sound lush. They're not I would actually say the AKG K371 had much more full vocals. These definitely sound more, I would say, they're full enough, but I wouldn't say thin. The other thing, too, is the bass on this, to me, sounds more polite. See, this is more, I would say, accurate and a little bit above correct. This is a little bit polite when it comes to bass. I always felt like the bass is just not exactly, if this is accurate with bass, this is right here. You know what I mean? Little bit polite with bass. This has incredible soundstage. This I used to think was neutral bright, but now that I listen to it now, I would say this is actually closer to neutral. So that's my 2 cents regarding this. Kind of these are, and I went through the sibilance test actually on these too, and this actually kind of blunts it down a little bit as well. Whereas these will definitely bring it out. Okay, another one I want to talk about. This is the Sony MDR MV1. These are, again, this is way more soundstage compared to this. This is way more V-shaped, but I remember I was like struggling with it because it's a balanced V-shape. It doesn't sound like a typical V-shaped IEM. Like when I think like typical V-shaped IEM, I'm thinking like a Shure SE215. We're just like lots of bass and a lot of treble, like, you know, just like that's V-shaped. This is very like balanced, but this is really amazing sounding. I feel like it also does a great job of where it can do almost a little bit of everything. Like it's super enjoyable, but at the same time, it will definitely let you know if you've got problems in your audio. And so it's kind of good for audio engineers, but also for enjoyers. It kind of has like, I don't even know what to compare it to, but it's just, it can do both, which makes it's kind of like the Cadenza 4 on an IEM. The Cadenza 4 is like that, where it actually is kind of like, you know, it's enjoyable, but at the same time, it can be used for editing when needed. And that's kind of what this does. The other one I want to talk about, sorry if I'm droning on here, but this is the Beyerdynamic D270 Pro. These are a lot less accurate compared to this. This is much more, I would say, where Beyerdynamic kind of took a U-turn and said, we're not going to make, you know, harsh sounding peaky like headphones like we did with the DT770 and DT990. We're going to make something that's more accessible to everyone else. So this is much more for monitoring and for enjoyment. Kind of like, I would say, in many ways, kind of like this, where it's not the best for critical editing. It's just basically more for enjoyment. And then another one I have here, this is the Sony MDR M1, and this is the one I actually use all the time. So this, actually, the bass is actually really wonky on this. And then the music on here is very wonky on here. It doesn't sound correct. But vocals are dead on accurate, just like this. But the comfort on this is extremely good. And the ability to point at flaws is still kind of there compared to the MDR 7506, but not as harsh. But I use these mainly for just like monitoring. I wear this, but I don't use these for like critical editing or mixing or anything. I just use these because I find these comfortable. So, yeah. All right, you guys